Piers Morgan recently hosted an episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored that was meant to be headline-worthy, provocative, and perhaps even revelatory. He invited two of the most controversial figures in modern pop culture and internet discourse: Kanye West, who now goes by the name Ye, and Sneako, an influencer whose polarizing opinions have created massive waves across social media platforms. While many expected fireworks, controversy, or maybe even some meaningful dialogue, what unfolded instead was awkward, tense, and, for some viewers, profoundly disappointing. The interview didn't just fail to live up to expectations, it disintegrated in real time, exposing not just the volatility of its participants, but the increasingly fractured nature of public discourse itself. For anyone who has followed Ye's journey over the past few years, it should come as no surprise that things went off the rails. Ye is a man who has built his career, both in music and beyond, by refusing to conform. He doesn't just march to the beat of his own drum, he tosses out the whole rhythm section and invents his own sound entirely, regardless of whether it's palatable or popular. This, at one time, made him a creative genius, a visionary. But in recent years, that same uncompromising spirit has veered into dangerous territory. His mental health struggles have played out in the public eye, and while fans have expressed concern, Ye himself has remained defiant, rejecting therapy, medications, or any form of help that doesn't align with his worldview. Ye's reputation has become increasingly stained by a series of erratic outbursts, polarizing statements, and alliances that leave the public scratching their heads. Once celebrated as the mind behind masterpieces like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and the innovative Yeezus, Ye now finds himself in a career nosedive. His release of Donda 2 was not just underwhelming, it was practically invisible. Distributed through his proprietary stem player rather than traditional platforms, the album reportedly sold fewer than 10,000 units, a stark contrast to the multi-platinum success of his earlier work. This wasn't just a commercial failure, it was a symbolic one, representing the widening chasm between Ye and the mainstream audience that once celebrated him. Amid the collapse of his music empire and personal relationships, Ye has found an unlikely ally in Sneako, a YouTuber and streamer whose views are just as inflammatory as Ye's. Sneako, real name Nico Ken de Balanthese, rose to internet fame for his brutally unfiltered commentary and unapologetic stance on issues like masculinity, freedom of speech, and political correctness. Like Ye, he rejects the rules of political decorum, but unlike Ye, who has a decades-long career as a musician and entrepreneur, Sneako's fame is rooted entirely in controversy. Together, the two men make a volatile pair, like gasoline and a match. When Piers Morgan extended an invitation for the duo to appear on Piers Morgan Uncensored, many predicted it would be a media circus. Morgan, a seasoned broadcaster, has carved out a niche for himself by putting controversial figures in the hot seat and holding them accountable, or at least appearing to. Known for grilling everyone from politicians to celebrities with tough, unrelenting questions, Morgan doesn't shy away from confrontation. And he's had Ye in that chair before. In 2022, their interview went viral for all the wrong reasons. It was a storm of clashing egos, ideological differences, and mutual disdain. So, one has to wonder, what did they think would happen the second time around? The new interview began calmly enough, with both Ye and Sneako seated side by side, their demeanor relatively relaxed. But as is often the case with Ye, the calm was deceptive. He is known for being emotionally reactive, especially when he feels misunderstood or attacked. While the footage that circulated online doesn't contain Piers Morgan's audio, it's evident from Ye's body language that tension was building. His arms crossed, his face hardened, his eyes narrowing, signs of someone who was rapidly becoming agitated. Then, without warning, Ye simply had enough. He stood up, removed his microphone, and walked off the set. The interview was over, not with a bang, but with a deeply uncomfortable silence. What makes this moment so telling isn't just that Ye stormed off. It's that he no longer seems interested in explaining himself, no longer willing to engage in a dialogue unless it's entirely on his own terms. In earlier years, Ye might have used a platform like Piers Morgan Uncensored to talk about his art, his spirituality, or his perspective on race and society. But now, he seems exhausted by criticism, allergic to scrutiny, and increasingly isolated. It's tragic, really. What once looked like fearless authenticity now feels more like a cry for help, muffled by pride and paranoia. The bigger question becomes, why invite him at all? Morgan is no stranger to controversy. He thrives on it. His interviews with figures like Andrew Tate and Alex Jones have drawn millions of views. But they've also raised questions about responsibility in media. When you give a platform to someone who is actively promoting dangerous or hateful rhetoric, does that make you complicit? Or are you simply exposing them for who they really are? Morgan has defended his choices by arguing that viewers have a right to see all sides, that free speech should reign supreme, and that the public can make up its own mind. But this interview, if we can even call it that, raises doubts about the effectiveness of that approach. As for Sneako, his presence on the show was equally troubling. Sitting quietly beside Ye for much of the segment, Sneako's role seemed secondary, almost passive. But that's misleading. Off-camera, on his own platforms, Sneako has amplified many of the same views that have alienated Ye from polite society. He's spoken out against feminism, praised authoritarian figures, and vilified anyone who disagrees with him. By pairing the two together, Piers Morgan Uncensored wasn't just facilitating a conversation, it was curating a spectacle. One that many found tasteless, irresponsible, and deeply unsettling. It remains to be seen how the full interview will be aired, edited, or presented. Was it live? Pre-recorded? Scripted to some degree? Piers Morgan is known for his ability to spin a narrative, to shape public perception in a way that maximizes engagement. In the coming days, we'll likely see snippets, reaction videos, and think pieces dissecting every frame of the broadcast. But for now, we're left with an uncomfortable truth. Some people are simply not in a place where public exposure benefits them. For Ye, the interview was not an opportunity, it was an unraveling. Ye's fall from grace is one of the most dramatic in the history of pop culture. Once hailed as the heir to Michael Jackson or Prince, he now finds himself shunned by the very institutions that once embraced him. Major brands like Adidas and Balenciaga have severed ties. His social media accounts have been suspended and reinstated more times than anyone can count. He has gone from being a tastemaker to a cautionary tale. And perhaps the saddest part is that it didn't have to be this way. Ye is not without talent. He is not without value. But he is without accountability. And in today's world, that is a recipe for irrelevance. The future of Ye's music career is murky at best. While diehard fans continue to support him, the broader public has moved on. Collaborators are few and far between. Many artists don't want the baggage that comes with working with Ye. He once had the power to bring together the biggest names in music: Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Kid Cudi, Travis Scott, even Paul McCartney. Now, most of those relationships have soured. He's been left with a dwindling circle of enablers and yes-men, people who nod along as he spirals further from the legacy he once dreamed of building. And then there's Dave Bluntz, an artist Ye has been seen associating with recently. While it's unclear whether this is a serious musical partnership or just a brief alliance, it speaks volumes about Ye's current state. Dave Bluntz is not exactly a household name, nor is he seen as a serious contributor to the art form. If this is the caliber of artist Ye is now collaborating with, it's a far cry from his former glory. It's not just a step down, it's a free fall. All of this paints a picture of a man who is not just misunderstood but lost. Lost in his own mind, lost in the maze of his ego, and perhaps most tragically, lost in the absence of real, constructive relationships. At some point, genius turns to madness when left unchecked. What we're witnessing isn't just a celebrity in decline, it's a human being in crisis. And while there are those who still root for his comeback, the truth is that comeback seems less likely with each passing controversy.